think that many people feel an unease about what's going on in science today.
Could you clarify that?
There are many people who are concerned that scientists are not being honest anymore, and that there is a unease with science today. And you see it in the episode that we're going through right now with COVID-19, and there's a great mistrust of the scientific and governmental establishment today, that they're no longer an authority, right? Or their authority is being called into question by a significant amount of the population. So I wanted to bring this point up with you because I think it's so important. And one of the things that I really have appreciated so much about your work is you love science. You love science and you want to save science. And I think that scientists don't fully recognize the peril that science is in today because of what you call scientism, right? Because of the elevating of certain theories to dogma and the ad hoc explanations, no matter what the evidence shows up, right? That it's become a real threat and a real existential risk of the public throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? And so it feels to me like there's a desperate need for more of the honesty in science that you're bringing, more of the metaphysical examination of what's going on in science in order to save science itself. You know, many people who are religious are looking for an integration between science and religion and are frustrated with the animosity between science and religion, right? And so, and are kind of rejecting science, but they're not really rejecting science. They're rejecting scientism. And that's one of the reasons I'm such a supporter of your work and have gotten so much from it myself personally, is because for me, you really resolve that animus.
No, I think this is a marvelous point you're making, and a point which needs to be made, and it really hasn't been made. First of all, it is an undeniable historical fact that somewhere in the 20th century, science became mendacious. Mendacity entered into the scientific modus operandi. And this is something entirely new.
And mendacity, what is the meaning of mendacity?
It is a kind of systematic untruthfulness.
Systematic untruthfulness, yes.
Not accidental, but systematic.
Purposeful.
And purposeful. And this is really a new phenomenon. I mean, scientists have always been human beings and not saints.
Make mistakes.
And perhaps not everything they say is gospel, but by and large, it can be said, and is historically true, I'm fully persuaded, that until around at least the beginning of the 20th century, scientists in their scientific statements were honest people. They didn't fudge data. I mean, it might have occurred once or twice here and there, but it was the exception, and it was definitely not accepted. It was not acceptable. If it ever turned out that a scientist fudged his data in order for profit, he would be persona non grata. He would be out of it. Mm-hmm. So scientist was an honest enterprise. Mm-hmm. But with the beginning of the 20th century, things began to shift. And as I say, mendacity did enter into the scientific modus operandi. Theories are being kept alive by ad hoc hypotheses just pulled out of thin air, But
mathematically elegant, probably.
Some of them are very... I haven't gone through the details of inflation theory, but I doubt not that the equations are very elegant.
Yes.
And mathematically, it's quite a feat to rescue a drowning theory by some beautiful trick.
Yes.
But mendacity did enter into the theory. For example, I actually gave in a book and in some interviews I gave earlier, we have the GPS method of determining the position of an airplane somewhere in our airspace.
Mm-hmm.
And the distances and velocities involved are such that Einsteinian effects, relativistic effects, would make a difference. And so one would think that in a civilization where Einstein is the great scientist, GPS would be run on an Einsteinian basis. Well, the fact, which is totally hidden from view and never published, the fact is that if you would use Einsteinian physics in the mechanics of GPS, planes would crash. You would not get the right results.
Wow.
The people in the business know this very well. Something like 50 nanoseconds difference it makes. Well, this correction is built into, even though they claim to be relativistic, they build that correction into their computer system to make things work. And so this is an example of outright mendacity. They claim to be relativistic. Einstein is still officially regarded as the foremost scientist, really, of modern times. And the fact of the matter is that we don't run our GPS on Einsteinian physics because planes would crash, which is okay. In fact, that's the thing to do. We don't want planes to crash. But the mendacity comes into the picture that we don't admit this.
Right.
And in fact, the people who are in the know, who are actually programming these processes, they know enough to keep quiet. I don't know what would happen. They probably would lose their job. So this is something the general public does not yet know. No university in the world will tell you about that. Mm-hmm. And I suppose most professors at universities don't know. This is sort of a secret which I wouldn't know if it weren't for happy circumstances which brought me into touch with the relevant papers and
mm-hmm.
some honest people broke the news. And this is one of the great strengths of the science right up to modern times, that whatever the limitations of the individual scientists may have been, they were honest people in their science. And the rest of their life we don't know. But when it came to the papers they would publish, they did not fudge their data. Maybe one or two of them did, but history has totally forgotten. Newton didn't, Lagrange didn't. This mendacity factor that I'm talking about is becoming more and more important. There are Nobel Prizes which have been given in physics in recent years, which are based upon mendacity. And in time, our foundation will hopefully publish papers with all the documentation. This is something the public should know. It's very important.
So you are not attacking science.
On the contrary, I'm trying to defend it against those who would kill it, because mendacity will kill it.